Entering the meeting now. This meeting is being recorded. You are the only participant.
So I was a Boy Scout and I was getting a merit badge.
us is too expensive. My mom invited some friends over, so that was another thing. Yeah. You may. You okay with that? Yep, we'll slide down one more and make all the room.
Oh, nope, you're good. Well, I can go behind you and out of the way. Or you could come down. This one's not reserved. If you come down, I'll come sit next to you. I got I'm gonna go for a long shot and say that this is usually for the dogs, so milk, hot chocolate, coffee. Yes. But I want me to go for It's okay, I have my card. It comes differently. Where you're really hard. With the beard straightening color. The lazy way. I know, I'm doing the same thing. It's okay, here, look, we make this team. her what she looked at me. My middle sister is
Now
now
my
my
turn.
turn. She has not been trying to flash. And my sister's currently watching center. Where she's at? Where did she go? She's currently in her mission. Been something where she's at.
Morning, everyone. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Family's here. Just give them a couple minutes to settle, and they'll be in a minute. Just one thing, we have a lot of people here today that I think would like to tell some stories and share some memories. This is being live streamed, and the camera's right there. So if you want to speak, come down. We'll give you the microphone, stand here so that people that are watching can see you. And it'll be recorded so that people can watch it later if they weren't able to do the event today. So we'll get started in just a minute. Thanks.
Everyone hear me? Does it sound good? Yes? Good. We're going to start just in a minute. Just to give you an idea so I can help manage the time, how many of you definitely would want to come up and say something? Just to give you an idea. We have some people who are definitely who have already agreed to. You're on my list, yeah. So are you. We're definitely going to come up here, but as you know, 70 hands went up, and we might have to. Okay. What do you know? Well, thank you all for coming this morning to remember, honor, and celebrate the life of Glen Bowen. We have several speakers who I've got commitments from who are willing to come up and speak today. And then after those people have spoken, we'll open it up. I also have a number of things that some of you have written for me to read as well. First, we're going to hear from the person who first brought Glen to the University of Utah, John Zoom. Where's the mic?
So, when HCI was being conceived back in the 90s, we were first told there was going to be no patients, no clinic, no hospital, no beds. It was going to be a research institute. And subsequently, I was told that no, we were going to take care of patients with certain types of cancer. And after that, Mr. Huntsman had some experience with skin cancer, and all of a sudden I was told we were having a skin cancer program. And of course I thought that was a great idea, and I particularly thought it was a great idea to have a melanoma program. And at the suggestion of Jerry Kruger, I recruited Glen Bowen from the University of Michigan. And I'll never forget, I took him out to dinner, and I was explaining to him what my expectations were of the job. And the Cancer Institute was just beginning, and I wasn't totally sure what was going to happen, but I gave him an explanation, and all of a sudden he got so wildly excited about what he could do and what the heck was going to happen with skin cancer at this place, and how he was going to start a melanoma program, and all the things we were going to do. And I felt like Santa Claus. I never saw anybody so excited about something. It was apparently a much better job than I thought it was after he got done telling me all the things he was going to do. But that was just typical of Glen. He had a story for everything and an excitement for everything. Then he started in 1999, and those of you who were here, we were just building this building and just started to put together a clinic on the second floor. And thanks to Ben Tanner and Karen Newman, we were doing all the things we needed for a clinic, and we had never really run a clinic over here, and we were trying to figure out how to get it right. And it was kind of complicated, and I hadn't thought much about Glen. And then he arrived in my office, and he said, "You know, John, I don't think you realize it, but there's tumbleweed blowing down the hallways over there. There is nothing happening." And he then proceeded to take about 5 minutes and explain to me what it was like to have a clinic, a beautiful clinic that was totally equipped, that had wonderful staff, had a wonderful office, and no patients. And he started going on about that, and within about 3 or 4 minutes, we were both laughing out loud with stories of what he had experienced at the early moments of the Huntsman Cancer Institute. So he was here right from the start. He was taking care of patients that include, as Karen mentioned to me earlier, the Huntsman family, as well as everyone in the university. And Glen became their skin cancer doctor very quickly. We agreed that things would get better, and lo and behold, things did get better. And they got better because of Glen. Glen was such an enthusiast for every single patient. For every patient, he had a story. If he was doing surgery on a patient, he had a story. He talked to them. He made them feel at ease. And over the years, I became very proud to have him be my department's person at the Huntsman Cancer Institute, the face of who we were. And he took great care of every single patient. And it was my honor to be his chairman and to have recruited him. And I'm sure you'll hear many other great things about Glen.
Thanks, John. We're next going to hear from Christina Calstuff, our co-chair of the Department of Dermatology.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you, John. I'm going to do my speaking this morning in 2 parts, a very short part here, and then at the end I'm going to introduce the video that I appreciate everybody helping to help put together this week. I'm just going to kind of finish off John's story with an additional element that was one of the stories sent in by one of the many, many people who have written emails and called over the week to express their how devastated they are and to tell some stories. So one of the stories was sent in by Nira Antal, who is a former resident, was actually on Emily's class, who said, I wish to share this part of the story, which was pretty much the same story when Huntsman Cancer Center was starting. They didn't have a spot for melanoma or skin cancer. So one day Glen was giving grand rounds explaining how the Huntsman Cancer Center was going to work and how dermatology got involved, since the oncologist initially did invite dermatology to the space. Glen stated, after much fasting and prayer, John Huntsman developed a basal cell carcinoma. And that is how dermatology got invited. So I know your story is slightly different. He had a very unique way of seeing the world. I think many of you have shared a lot of stories. One of the skills that he had was his storytelling, and you know, many of you know and have worked with him in clinic know that some of these are often on the edge of inappropriate. So I'm going to channel that spirit and tell you a story. In 2004, when I was a resident, Dave Hansen and Doug Powell and Glen and another friend and I decided to do a trip to the White Rim. This is a 100-mile mountain bike ride. We love to ride his mountain bike. And so we were all divided up the chore of the meals. So everybody was assigned a meal, and we all shopped. And before we left, we all went to Dave Hansen's house and laid all the food out. And so everybody's dumping their groceries out onto the counter. And then throws out just one thing. I think he actually had other plans. And it's taro root, which, if those of you don't know what that looks like, it's a root vegetable, and it's kind of brown and kind of hairy. And it's an exact replica in size and shape of the male genitalia. And we all just look at it, and we look at him and goes, I don't know what it is, but I had to buy it. So that became our mascot for the trip. So we really enjoyed that. Of course, you couldn't ride your bike with Glen very long without laughing so hard you had to stop because you were out of breath. So it was a lovely trip, a great memory. I'll show some pictures of that later. So thank you very much, and I'll have to continue.
Thanks, Christina. Next, I'd like to ask Mary Beckley, who's the CEO of Huntsman Cancer Institute, to say a few words.
Well, I want to welcome everybody here for this celebration of Glen's life and tribute to his many contributions in the way he touched all of us at HCI and Department of Dermatology and many other parts of the university. And thanks to Glen's family, and I know many patients are here today too, hearing about this opportunity to reflect on a life really well lived. I'll just say a few words about Glen, and it's fun to hear these stories, some of which I didn't know. But you know, Glen had passion. I think that's one of the things I really think about when I think about Glen. And I remember him telling the story of how he first fell in love with medicine when he was just like a middle schooler, and he was already thinking about melanoma even at that time. And you know, and he grabbed on to that idea, and you know, years later was making incredible contributions. He brought that passion every single day, and was somebody who's passionate. You know, work kind of creates energy, and I think Glen was one of those people for whom his passion for melanoma created energy and brought in others. And I just want you all to know that there's no more tumbleweed in the Huntsman Cancer Institute anymore. In fact, our melanoma program, which you know was really sort of spearheaded in a partnership between HCI and dermatology and led initially by Glen, is now one of our signature programs here at the University of Utah and Huntsman Cancer Institute. And you can really be grateful to your vision, John, and Glen's incredible passion for making that so. He was really skilled and compassionate and amazing physician. Not that anyone likes to be a cancer patient here at HCI, but I was one of Glen's patients for many years. And, I still remember every time I would come in to visit with him and have the mole mapping and everything else, that, the time went by like that because, he was like scanning me every millimeter of my body for anything unusual, of which there's lots of stuff to find. And then he would be telling me these stories and these jokes and, doing surgery and all this stuff. By the time I got out of there, I had no idea what had happened, but I had laughed. He was just this, totally remarkable human being. And then always, after every visit, I got a little note from him, saying, just want you to know, this is what it was, and if you ever go to anyone else, tell them not to biopsy that spot again, because there's nothing going on there. And he was just, incredibly attentive. I don't know how he was so attentive to everyone, and especially me, because I didn't really have anything very significant going on by the time I got to see him. He was an incredibly keen observer. I'm sure you all appreciate that, and we heard that. You noticed those tumbleweeds and marched right down to John Zone's office to give him the message. He was somebody that I could always count on for the straight deal. If you wanted to know what was going on, if you went and talked to Glen, he'd give you the straight deal. He was totally candid. He wanted things to really happen here at Huntsman Cancer Institute at the University of Utah. And he was a keen observer, and he had always good input. And he didn't whitewash it. And I really appreciated that, and I'm sure lots of you experienced that with him as well. I think another thing about Glen that is really important is how much he valued people. I mean, he was an incredible, talented, skilled, internationally renowned expert, but he was just one of the team. He was somebody who was an incredible advocate for his patients. He was an incredible advocate for everyone he worked with in the clinic, on his clinic team, and he was one of the team. And he taught everybody how to work together in the most productive and human way. He was totally amazing in that regard. He mentored trainees and taught them, listen, the clinical team, he used to say, the clinical team is like an octopus. Collectively, it has one brain and 8 arms. I might be one arm, the nurse might be one arm, the scheduler might be one arm, the custodial staff might be one arm, the nutritionist might be one arm. We're all one organism, and no one arm is more important than the other. No one arm is dominant over the other. Together, we're a really smart organism that can really do things that are magical and really help patients. He was somebody who brought every day when he walked in the doors here at HCI a commitment to our core principles, the patient and community first, united effort, and excellence in all we do. He lived those principles, and he did it bringing incredible hope and optimism, incredible joy, incredible energy, and incredible humor that lightened up the day for everyone he touched. So he's going to be greatly missed.
Thanks, Mary. So to say that Glen Bowen was unique would be the understatement of the century. What made him truly remarkable is he had so many talents and served so many roles. Father, husband, physician, dermatologist, neurosurgeon. For many, that would be enough. but he was a workhorse. He saw more patients than anybody. He'd do anything for his patients. Clinical researcher, very creative, inspiring speaker. Whenever we had the resident applicants come, we always made sure that Glen was going to be a speaker. Superb communicator, teacher, colleague, mentor, friend. He loved going up to his cabin, kayaking in the ocean. Sunday school teacher, Utah promoter. Whenever we had candidates come in, even if they weren't from the Department of Dermatology, for HCI, I would always bring them down at least for 5 minutes to talk with Glen, so we could tell them how great Utah was, and try to convince them to come here. Avid motorcyclist, canyon explorer, crossword solver, cartoon drawer, humorist, storyteller, voice impressionist. He built a sukkah for our family. He also many times helped me. He carved these acrylic tops I was able to use for my fish tanks with his home saws. The Halloween parties were legendary. World traveler. So there's really no one word or phrase that can completely encompass Glen Bowen, except maybe this one. So most of us are well liked by our patients, but Glen was beloved. He always had the #1 ranking for the Press-Ganey patient satisfaction scores. A typical conversation with my patients would usually go something like this. Sir, you're going to need Mohs surgery. Again, I saw you see Dr. Bowen previously, but it looks like he's booked out about 2 months. So maybe we should set you up with one of our other surgeons in the department. And the answer was always absolutely not. I don't care how long I have to wait. I'm going back to Dr. Bowen. And then the next time, the next conversation with a patient like that, sir, we've got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is you're going to need that Mohs surgery again. But the good news is you're going to get to see Dr. Bowen. So when Glen first started here, he really was covering a lot of clinical ground. He was doing our entire cutaneous lymphoma program, melanoma program, mold mapping, and skin screening. And at that time, I didn't really have a real clinical focus in my career. I was trying to get my lab up and running. And Glen really wanted to do surgery. He really didn't want to do the skin cancer screening and the mold mapping. And so he asked if I'd take over the mold mapping program. And he said, it'll be great. I'll send the surgery patients to you for mold mapping, and then you'll send them back to me to excise melanomas. And I've always been grateful to Glen for giving me that opportunity, allowing me to develop my own clinical program, which has been terrific for me. But there was just one problem with this handoff. Many of you have had the experience of following Glen as a presenter or speaker on the schedule, and it's really a very tough act to follow. So imagine having that experience with every single patient. But Glen taught me one thing from the very beginning, and I always remember this. The first time you see a new patient, remember one thing about them that you can ask them about the next time, and that allow you to have something to talk about with them. So that's what I do with the epic sticky note. I've always got some little thing about each patient, and Glen taught me that. So Glen really was a master surgeon. I was always amazed by the quality of his work. I'm seeing these patients back and trying to go through all their skin cancers and looking for sites of recurrence, and sometimes you cannot even find the scar. The healing was so good. I mentioned Glen was a great communicator. He really had this knack for being able to explain things in very simple terms that patients would understand. This is from a wound healing video that he made, and when I checked the other day, it's got over 120,000 views. That's pretty impressive. Let's talk about the melanoma conference. So this is really, this has been Glen's administrative role in our melanoma program to run this conference. It's really been the glue that holds our program together. It's the only time the clinicians and the scientists can meet. And this is where Glen held court every Thursday morning, 7 a.m. from the beginning. This was always a collaboration with Intermountain Healthcare, and that continues today. And Glen always tried to make sure everyone's view was considered and really keep a focus on the patient. If someone would be presenting a case, we want to know, where did this patient live? What was their occupation? So we could really take that into account and considering the best treatment recommendations. So Glen worked off a tablet. So he could take notes during the conference, and often the diagrams would facilitate the discussion. Sometimes the diagrams would provide on the patient the course of treatment with the Melanoma there. Robert Baca, when he was here, he always used the term theater instead of operating room. And so this patient was decided to need surgery. So Glen said, Robert's going to take him to the theater. This patient was going to be was being considered for this long course of immunotherapy, and saying, boy, he's going to be chained to that for 3 years. Glen provided the imagery to help us appreciate what that was going to be like. This is my favorite. The patient there was satellitosis, and here are the satellites going around the sun there. At the time, we had this trial called the green peptide trial, which is a vaccine, and that was one of the options for this patient. And so someone said, they're not going to want to do that. And that evoked in Glen a memory of Dr. Seuss and Green Eggs and Ham. There's the cat in the hat. I will not take green peptides. Sometimes, though, during the conference, Glen's mind would wander. Sometimes the drawings weren't really, relevant to the, here's a patient on immunotherapy, and they're going to be checked every 3 months, and somehow this leads to a duck. Makes no sense, but you've got to appreciate the artistic rendering. So, is Travis here? Travis was our patient coordinator, and I guess one day wasn't too busy. But Glen really was an explorer. He was always interested in new technologies, new techniques, new pharmaceuticals, anything that he could do to help his patients. So a major focus of his clinical career was to optimize surgery for lineal malignum. For those of you who don't know, this is an insidious form of melanoma. It's very difficult to completely remove from the skin, and he developed a novel way of pre-treating the skin before surgery and showed he could get the same rate of cure while leaving the patient with a much smaller scar. There were probably several thousand people walking around today who benefited from this treatment. So one time, Glen and I were in New York. Another one of his talents was this ability to make connections with people. And he could converse with anyone on any level. And so we're in New York, and he wanted to go to an authentic Jewish delicatessen. And so that definitely meant the Carnegie. And at this place, if you've ever been there, you're jam-packed in. People are trying to eat these ginormous sandwiches. And no one's talking to each other. And we hadn't been seated for more than a minute. Glen announced to the entire table, hey, we're from Utah. What's good here? Within a minute, the whole table engaged in a very lively conversation. The next week at Melanoma Conference, Glen announced that he had survived the trip to New York with Doug Grossman. But the reality is, it was he who survived the trip to New York. So one of the secrets to Glen's extraordinary communication and presentation skills was his uncanny ability to create a lasting visual image with his patient or the audience. We had our melanoma patient symposium last fall, and I asked Glen to give a talk on just what is melanoma, very basic for the patients. And so he shows up with his bag of stuffed animals. I said, what's this? He said, those are my props. When it came time to explain what a melanocyte is, he pulled from the bag a stuffed octopus and explained how the nerves were like melanocyte dendrites. They could touch all the multiple keratinocytes. Even now, I still, every time I hear the word melanocyte, that's what I think of, the stuffed octopus. So the last time I saw Glen was 2 weeks ago. We went out to see this movie, Ford vs. Ferrari. For decades, though, the real rivalry in Utah, though, well, long before this movie came out, was motorcycle versus a superbly maintained rear-wheel drive Volvo. Glen loved to drive his motorcycle to work, and his side of the story is that one morning he pulled up next to me as we were driving up to the medical center and waved good morning, at which point I abruptly veered into him and ran off. I have no recollection of this incident. Maybe he was in my blind spot. Thereafter, he always referred publicly to my vehicle as never mind that it provided transportation for him. His motorcycle ran out of gas. I was able to keep the car running long enough to teach both my kids how to drive. But eventually, after 25 years, I couldn't replace the parts anymore. The day he came in and saw I had a brand new car in my parking spot, he was just overjoyed. So much has been made of Glen's jokes. He did have a joke for every occasion. Many of them were quite clever. The most commonly told one, the patient who had a skin cancer on the lateral forehead and upper cheek. Looks like we need to do some temple work today. Now, the only problem with Glen's jokes is that you wouldn't remember which joke he had told to whom. And so sometimes patients got a little tired of hearing for the 5th or 6th time that they needed more temple work. They would annoy Glen to no end when I would stop him in the middle of a joke and say, oh, I've heard this one. And really wanted to annoy him, interrupt him in the middle and deliver the punchline. And I did that many times. So Glen also knew how to take a joke. Well, this was before we had the whiteboards in the rooms. He used to wear this fanny pack, and it was jam-packed with all his pens and markers and little things, and these diagrams of the skin. And so he'd sit down with the patient and he'd open it up and pull out the things and the other props that he'd use. So one year as a birthday surprise, the staff, before he came in the morning, emptied it out and stuffed it with tampons. You can imagine his reaction the first time he opened it up in front of the patient and all the tampons came out.
I couldn't make sure it was okay with the patient.
So that's a true story. So you've already heard about Glen's stories. They were legendary. And I've been thinking about this. What made them so impactful? And it really is a combination of 3 elements. First is the way the story is told. The voice, the facial expression, the gestures, pausing to create anticipation. Second, the story had to be so bizarre that it could not be true, and it could only happen to him. And third, and importantly, it was usually self-deprecating, exposing one of his flaws. When he unleashed one of these stories on you, if it was the first time you heard it, the combination of these elements together was so powerful, you would be paralyzed with such intense laughter that if you weren't sitting down or holding on to something, you would likely fall down. I remember I was on the floor the first time I heard his story when he first realized he was going bald. I'm going to attempt to tell what is my favorite Glen Bowen story. He talks about one afternoon he was riding his motorcycle on I-15 and noticed that his foot was getting kind of warm. But he just kept writing, and it was getting warmer. And apparently his leg was tired, and he was kind of resting it on the exhaust pipe. And then it was really hot, and he looked down, and his boot was on fire. But Glen had the presence of mind. He was at an exit and noticed a nearby Tesoro station, and was able to get over there and put out the fire by plunging his foot into the container that held the window washer. The best part of the story, and I can't do it, is his impression of the guy who was pumping the gas, and the bad guy's expression. So Glen got me out of jam a number of times. The best part of practicing at HCI was having Glen around, not just helping with the tough cases, but he was always there to talk about things, whatever it was. And a few times he really did save me. So this was a little while ago. He's featuring a cut on my finger, and I'm actually not wincing because of the pain, but because he just launched into a story that I've heard 50 times. At some point, I had this skin. So it started with me, let's just say it was a very private location. And so I looked at him and I said, can you take care of this and can we do it discreetly? He said, sure, no problem. Just come by after clinic. I'll make sure the staff will be gone and we'll get it done. So we did that. He had finished the procedure and slide off the table. And as I'm pulling out my pants, I turn around and see the entire clinic staff. But that was Glen's way of getting back at me for interrupting his jokes. This is my last slide. Last Sunday I was out here working, finishing up the manuscript, and on my way home I got the call about Glen. Came in the next morning, I knew that we wanted to dedicate this paper to his memory, and just got this submitted yesterday, and this was the dedication that I wrote. We dedicate this work to one of the authors whose untimely death occurred just days before this manuscript was submitted. Glen Bowen was keenly interested in developing new technologies, like this is what this paper is about, to improve patient care. He was a tireless and creative champion for his patients with an amazing sense of humor who graced the Huntsman Cancer Institute for 20 years. And for me, that says all. Now I'd like to call up Keith Duffy, who is going to share some stories.
Okay. I think this is a very appropriate slide. So I think the first thing that Glen might say if he was here to go, Grossman, I didn't know you were that funny. So does everybody here know what La Quinta means in Spanish? It means next to Denny's. So you start with that joke, deadpan, and then you launch into this impersonation of his father and pull up his scrubs to his nipples. And then you follow with some impression of a Scotsman talking about genitalia, and he'd end the joke with something like, a little wee lassie. Accents and impersonation. And that was 7:30. We hadn't even seen the patient. That's the kind of energy this guy had. The La Quinta joke actually came back to me in a flash because I was speaking with Murray Cotter, who was a fellow co-resident with me, somebody who was mentored by Glen, he's a Mohs surgeon now in Michigan. And he goes, every time I go by La Quinta, I think of that guy. And, sort of like Doug is alluding to, he, every time he goes by La Quinta, he tells his joke to his wife. And much to his wife's chagrin, she goes, yeah, I know. But, that kind of thing, when you spend time around Glen, there's like little Glen nuggets everywhere. So you look around, and Glen found all these things in the real world that were extremely banal and funny, and he brought them to life. So if you look, you'll find these little Glen nuggets kind of everywhere you look. I met him in 2003 for the first time as a rotating medical student from New York. And even in my crazy medical school naivety, fog/bliss, I knew Glen was a very different cat. I had been around a bunch of doctors at that point, and I had never met anybody like Glen. I didn't know at that time that Glen and Annalise would be, a huge part of my career. I'm a Mohs surgeon and a dermatopathologist, and Glen is a Mohs surgeon and Annalise is a dermatopathologist. Both of them have been really, really important in my career. I was fortunate enough to match into this program, even though John Zone probably didn't want me. And when I worked with Glen, I'd spend 8 or 9 hours with this guy doing Mohs surgery, seeing very complex skin cancers. And it never failed. After clinic, he'd go, all right, let's head down to the conference room, and what do you want to talk about? Old school. Take a dry eraser, do a chalk talk. And he could talk about anything, which was incredible. He had this passion for sharing not only stories and things like that, but knowledge and asking your opinion, asking a second or third year resident their opinion on something. That's pretty special, and actually listen to you. So in these sessions, we talk about anything in and out of dermatology and medicine. We talk about skin flaps. We talk about cutaneous lymphoma, slot canyons. He knew a hell of a lot about slot canyons. If you want a slot canyon reference, he was your go-to guy. Orographic lifting. He knew a lot about that too. He knew about everything, it seemed. And it was always my impression of him that he had what most of us lose is this 7-year-old curiosity. But you put that in a 50-year-old man who has the ability to go get the knowledge, or to maybe travel to get the knowledge, and that's Glen. Last week, and Doug has been the front of this much more than I, but I was seeing a patient last week, a long-term patient of Glen, and he goes, Dr. Duffy, I like you just fine, but you know what? You're much shorter and less funny than Bowen. And he was right on both of those accounts. I was just happy to be, compared in some way to Glen. Tell me that I was just fine. That was good enough for me. There's, a big hole in the university, Department of Dermatology, and the Huntsman Cancer Institute. His passing is this huge black hole that will never be filled. So we all have to find a way around that and do it without Glen. Times it's going to be very hard. When I went back to seeing patients this week, it was like there was this other voice in my head. Normally what I do is I have a problem patient, I grab Glen and pull him into the room, or I email him, and I'd say, Glen, I got this, what do I do with this? And then he'd give me some sage wisdom, and I'd more than likely follow his advice, because he's had so much experience with these complex skin cancers. But I didn't have that this week, right? And so I developed this sort of mantra, the WWGBD. What would Glen Bowen do at this point, right? Many of you in the audience know about skin cancer and have worked around skin cancer, and some of you may have not. But Glen's practice was not like the typical skin cancer practice. He dealt with the most complex, rare skin cancers that are out there. These were not easy patients to treat. Patients with multiple melanomas, patients who've been transplanted with innumerable, very high-risk squamous cell carcinomas in need of multidisciplinary care. Basal cells eroding into the flora. Oh, nasty things. And he was doing this day in and day out for 20 years. He was the rock of skin cancer in Utah for 20 years. It all revolved around him. So, dealing with these really tough, difficult patients, the most frustrating part of the whole thing was that he was always number one on the goddamn press page. How did you do it? And I think we all know, from the stories that we have, and Mary Becker's story is probably the best one of the whole thing. That's how he did it. I'm going to share a couple of photos and a kind of story about Glen. We had the opportunity a number of years ago to go and fly in a flight simulator together. So as the story goes, we were having a couple of cocktails at the holiday party, and one of our residents at the time, her spouse, was a flight instructor at United in Denver. And we never thought he'd call, but 8 or 9 months later he calls and he goes, "Hey, I got Saturday morning in the flight simulator. You guys want to come out?" Take a book immediately. I think we charged the department, John. Is that okay? And I can remember that Saturday morning we all flew to Denver together, Scott Florell, myself, and Glen. And I mean, giddy, like Glen was jumping and giddy and just couldn't wait to get in the cockpit of this plane. And we were all the same. We were really expecting to have a great time. So this is us before we go into the United building. Glen's in the middle there. You can see how much shorter I am than Glen. This is the thumbs up. If you look in the back, this is the 767 flight simulator that we're about to get into. And these things are the real deal. These are like $10 or $15 million video games. I mean, you get in there and you feel like you're in a cockpit. I mean, like a real plane cockpit, and everything looks and feels like that. This is a photo provided by Scott Florell. And Glen would say something like, "Look at the 3 asses in this photo." That's Craig, our instructor, in the middle. Teaches how to fly the plane. And when I was looking at this the other day, Scott sent me a photo. I went, at this point in my career, this is probably about 3 or 4 years into my career back here at the university, this is kind of what it felt like to me. Glen was the captain in the left seat, and I was co-captain in the right seat. He really was a great mentor. He taught me how to navigate through the university, taught me how to navigate my Mohs practice, collaborated with me on research and with patients. So this was a really good snapshot of probably 2013 or 14 for me when we did this. So, I really felt like I was living at this point. This guy I idolized forever. I got to work with him. I got to fly a damn plane with him. So, just grab me for 1 second, Christine, you just load up the videos. So, I have a couple of videos from this. So, the first one is going to be Glen flying under the Golden Gate Bridge on an approach to San Francisco Airport. And so I want to point out just one thing to the general public here. Is that if you hear this sound coming from the cockpit, you're in trouble. And it goes something like this. It goes, pull up, pull up, pull up. And if that's coming out of the cockpit, you're in trouble. Right? Yeah.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
So this is now flying the plane underneath the Golden Gate. And then we're going to make a big approach to San Francisco. Okay. Now the next one is Glen landing the plane at LaGuardia. So this was, I mean, such a cool experience. We were flying over Brazil, we were flying to New York, I buzzed the Statue of Liberty. I mean, it was so much fun to do this. So this one is Glen landing at LaGuardia. So what you're not going to see in this video is the first time he tried to land at LaGuardia. Okay? Because we're coming in, and he's going to put it down about like halfway down the runway, and you can basically see the Long Island Sound in front of us. And Craig goes, "You got to take this thing up right now." Flight simulators don't like when you crash. Okay? So this is Glen landing at LaGuardia. Okay, ready?
50. 30. 10.
He could do a lot of things well, but he could not land a big plane. The sad part about this is that between Scott, Glen, and I, this was the best landing of the day. So, we had a blast in Denver, and you know, as you are with the Glen anytime, you know, I mean, I had 100 belly laughs that day, and great, yes, again. We had a great day, and it's something that I probably repeat myself a little bit. This was alluded to earlier too, and I'm going to kind of end on this note, is that I remember a few years ago following Glen in a lecture to the med students. And I come in about 20, 30 minutes before Glen's lecture is over to, you know, get my wits about me. And he's a really tough act to follow, as everybody knows. So come in and wildly entertaining and informative at the same time, and you just learn so much from just watching him. And I'm sitting in the back, and then I look down, and the guy, he's doing it in his socks. He's running around just in his socks, you know, going up and down the stairs. And I told this story at the Bowen's house the other day, and I hadn't thought about it in a while. And so I was thinking about this shoeless thing, and you know, I was trying to concoct some kind of theory, which I think I came up with. I think Glen, you can see all of this on the screen. I think he was, as basic as it sounds, I think he was too confined by a pair of shoes. You know, it's interesting. You know, we talked inside about filling people's shoes or walking in people's shoes. And this is not something Glen was ever looking to do. There was no person that, you know, he could mimic. He was just that unique and different and talented. And, you know, he didn't want to wear this societal shoe. And it's a little reminiscent to me of the Back to the Future scene, which I think Glen would appreciate this reference. It's when Doc Brown talks to Marty McFly, you know, Michael J. Fox, and he goes, you know, roads, where we're going, we don't need any roads. And they drive off in the DeLorean, and then I have this weird fantasy that in the afterlife, Glen's car is a DeLorean. So unique and different and rare. You know, so when I picture Glen, you know, in the afterlife, he's got his DeLorean, and then he's got like 100 motorcycles to choose from as he's ready to take off. So he didn't need roads or shoes or any of the basic stuff that us people need. You know, he really blazed his own shoeless path. And this is Glen Montrose Bowen, and we're going to miss him very dearly. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Next, I want to call up Tanya Bowles. Tanya, I mentioned we were talking about the Melanoma conference. Glen went to great lengths to try to keep this collaboration going with Intermountain Healthcare, and Tanya's kind of the face of that and was always there with us for many years. And so Tanya,
I appreciate it. I'll be really brief because I just really appreciate the thoughts that were shared already today. I want to give love to Amelie and the family. I've thought a lot about you all this week, and I can't imagine what you're going through. But I really just wanted to say to you all that losing Glen has reminded us how short and unpredictable our lives are. And in this building, we see that every day with our patients. But losing Glen has really brought that home again in a really painful way. But I wanted you all to know the time that he dedicated here and all these stories that we're telling and all those Thursday 7 a.m. meetings that he left the house for. They mattered. They mattered to us and they mattered to the patients. And the legacy continues. And as I was looking around the room this morning, there's so many young people here. You know, there's so many residents, and there's older people too that have known him for years. But this is the trickle effect that he's left. So that time was valuable. So thank you for giving me a minute, and my love and peace to you all.
Thanks, Tanya. Coming up. And next, we're going to hear from someone who flew all the way from Sacramento to be here this morning. Kalina Nolan was our nurse manager in the clinic, and was really down in the trenches with Glen. I mean, really down in the trenches. And so she's going to share a few thoughts with us.
Guys. Thank you all for having me. First of all, Glen, GB, Gleniford, Bowen, Bo, Dr. Bowen, Dad. These are just a few names that I've heard this extraordinary man called in my almost 10 years of knowing him. My name is Kalina, as Glen called me, Noose. And I had the honor of working alongside him from 2010 to 2015 as his nurse. I first met Glen when I flew to Salt Lake City for a marathon interview for a potential job opening in dermatology. I arrived at the airport really early that morning and flew back home to Washington State after 5 o'clock. It was a long day. I remember sitting in the break room as the MAs came filing in and were like, "Oh, you're still here, okay?" And Mark Hyde came in to take me to interview with Dr. Bowen. I distinctly remember the elevator ride up to the 6th floor when his office was up here with Mark, and Mark asked me if I had had a chance to meet Glen today, and I said no. And Mark just sat in the corner, kind of, okay. And I was like, well, that was weird, but we took the elevator ride up. We arrived in Glen's office. I introduced myself, made sure I made good eye contact, shook his hands, all the things you're supposed to do right in an interview. And he said, "Tell me a little about yourself." So I did. And he asked me if I'd ever heard of Moe's. And I told him honestly, I said no. I said, but the MAs had kind of filled me in downstairs. And he goes, well, proceeded to stand up out of his chair, grabbed a marker, and headed straight for the whiteboard. I had a chance to kind of catch a side eye at Mark's expression sitting next to me, and he still had his arms crossed, just smirking, kind of watching him do his thing. And honestly, by the time I left in 2015, I distinctly remember myself having that smile on my face, watching him teach new employees, draw a diagram for a patient in the room, or just while listening to him tell a story. I like this slide because it really is difficult to put in one word. Just one word doesn't do him justice. There isn't one word that comes to mind. There's so many. He's in a league of his own. His love was genuine. And I think the most important quality is he had this uncanny ability to make every single person that he came in contact with feel important and valued, and they belonged. Whether it was someone cleaning the bathroom, a new patient who had just been referred to Moe's, a patient he had seen 10 times, a new employee, or just someone walking down the hallway, he made you feel heard, he made you feel important, and you walked away feeling like a better person. Glen was a storyteller, and we could spend years probably in the same room telling stories that he's told you. But as Doug said, what made his stories just infectious is that he captivated you, he engaged you, he brought you in, and no matter if you'd heard the story for one time or 50 times, every time you were like, oh yeah, what's next? I love this story. You were just couldn't wait to hear what was next. Some of my favorites were stories about his mission to Japan, stories about his dad and the car wash, and his grandpa and the car wash, and med school stories, and stories about dating Annalie, and stories about his kids growing up and some of the cute things that they would say. I still remember one of my favorites was when Zoe said, smooth to the touch, about a sculpture, and she was rubbing the sculpture's bottoms. Before I moved to Florida in 2015, I knew that I wanted to remember not only his stories, but just how he told them. And I told him up front, I said, honestly, every time you start telling a story in the next couple months, I am going to pull out my phone and I am going to record you. And I did. I have them, and I've shown those videos to my coworkers in Florida. He helped me, along with Dr. Duffy, get a Mohs position in Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, in Texas, and now at my Mohs, where I work at Mohs in Sacramento, California. I've shown all those videos just to give people a brief snapshot of this brilliant, hilarious human that I was lucky enough to work with. I really had no idea how important those videos would be until this week. Glen loved to teach. It truly was his passion. He and Mark taught me how to suture. He helped inspire me to pursue research and have research presented at 2 Mohs meetings. You wanted to do well in every aspect of your life and at work because Glen believed in you. He was a trusted and loved surgeon. He was extremely dedicated to his patients and had their best interest at heart. His patients really did love him. He had a memory bank a mile deep, as Doug said, and he would always remember something about a patient that they mentioned in their last appointment. It would be a spouse's name or a wedding that someone was planning to go to, and he always remembered names. And when they mentioned that at their follow-up appointment, you saw the patient kind of like sit up a little bit like, wow, he was listening and he remembered it, and it just added that personal touch. And I really never knew how much I would rely on his surgical skills personally until my husband needed a slow Mohs procedure for a melanoma in situ on his scalp. He was a work hard, play hard person. We were always trying to plan the next time we could have a party, Halloween party host, where we could go to Bowen's cabin in Heber, float down the Provo River. The Christmas parties he'd host, or just going somewhere to watch the big game. To this day, it still is pretty amazing to me that we would spend over 40 hours a week together and then still be like jacked up to have fun on the weekend. Like, that says something about this place and the atmosphere he created in the family, and Glen was our leader. Glen loved to have fun, and thankfully I found this, but he not only acted in, also directed, produced the award-winning Huntsman Dermatology Gumby movie. He could often be found with his legs crossed, propped up in the Mohs lab, fake smoking his writing pen, looking out the window to the hillside. And he'd be sure to drop the ash too, so he always answered his vocera in the bathroom, as he knew that it would echo. So whoever was on the other end, you'd be like, he was great with a quick one-liner. I think of it 3 hours later and he had it within 2 seconds. He could not only nail every single accent you would ask of him. He was the official bocce ball judge at his cabin, but you could only play after you picked out your silly hat from the hat wall. He loved a good game of telestrations. And he was the best person to hear commentary from roaming the streets of Las Vegas during the Mohs meeting in 2011. And most of all, he loved involving everyone in the fun. The last time I saw Glen was at the annual Mohs meeting in Chicago in May 2018. That weekend was filled with reminiscing, laughing, taking walks together during lecture breaks. watching the NBA playoff games in the hotel lobby, eating gelato, and talking all things sports as we always love to do, catching up with our families. We spent hours on Michigan Avenue, walking around Chicago with his friend and fellow Mohs surgeon Daryl Fader, and one of my Florida coworkers, laughing at all of his stories, eating Italian food, sitting on the steps by the Chicago River, talking about his kids and Dion, and just enjoying each other's company. Our friendship continued long after I left Huntsman, and even though 10 years is never really long enough to have known someone like Glen, I truly am a better person, nurse, wife, mom, and friend because he was a part of my life. Glen has been there for me and my family personally since the moment I was hired here at Huntsman. He visited us in the hospital when Dion was less than 12 hours old, examining him with his loupes. And he took care of us until the day I left, literally helping load boxes, along with lots of people here, into the big yellow Penske truck. After I left, we continued to stay in touch, whether it was through an email or through a text. And we started the same, and I don't remember why, but every email or text we would end with, "Miss your guts." That was just something that we started saying. So Glen, I love you. I will never forget the impact you've had on my life, and I will forever miss your guts.
Thanks, Kalina. Kalina mentioned the Gumby movie. We thought about showing it, but it's too long. Glen literally spent 3 months making this movie, and involved everybody in the clinic. Everyone, he wrote a scene for every person, and was there directing and everything. Several of the staff have given me things to read. One of them indicated that she would like to come up and make her remarks. And so I'm going to ask Amberly Waters to come up. Amberly has probably been here in terms of the AMAs probably for longer than any of them, right? I think so.
As Dr. Grossman said, my name is Amberly Waters. I've been with Glen for almost 11 years. Having spent 40 hours a week together for that long makes my friendship with Glen extra special in my book, even family status. So to lose a friend turned family member unexpectedly is needless to say heartbreaking. Glen was not perfect, as none of us are, as evidenced by stories we could tell for days about Glen and his corpse. Like how he would hit his head on the exam lights, how he once crushed his own leg with the exam chair, or at one point in the OR cauterized his own testicles with a Bowen. I guys down myself. Wanting to tell Glen about my new shoes. About my recent move to a new house. About the latest bad date I've been on. About my next trip I just booked that I'll need his suggestions about because he's no doubt been there. My new spot on my arm I'm freaking out about, thinking it might be melanoma or maybe a basal cell or just an intradermal nevus. Hard to tell at this point because it's only been a week. What other person could I lightly panic to? His reassurance and loving arm around me and so many things in my life meant the world. And why would anyone care about these silly things? Because he cared about me. And he cared about each of you here today. He cared about the cows in the corral and the deer that jumped the fence. The ants formicating, not fornicating, on the skin. The worms I view on the tree roots. The dermis, like the leather on your shoes. The tissue that was sliced as if on a cheese planer. The layers of cake with frosting. The leaves on the swimming pool cover that haven't gotten wet and into the filter system. The oil slicks, the fried eggs. Some with yolks sunny side up, and some with yolks that broke. The white balance on your camera, putting greens. Coffee spilled on the floor, and of course the paraffin wax. His mother used to use when she bottled fruit. He was happy to do your temple work. Glad you came in to get us off your chest. And all this is no skin off of his nose. He took great pride in helping you with your weight loss program. And he would encourage you to go home and get on the bathroom scale and compare post-surgery weight to this morning's weight. He literally cared about everyone and everything. He always made everyone feel as if they were his number one. Whether it be a patient, a friend, a family member, or one of us, he always cared about the one. He made time to make each person feel special. I'd like to think I was truly his favorite. But how am I to know for sure when he made everyone feel like his favorite? We all cherish his gooberish smile, his adorable laugh, his pump-up jump kicks before going into a room, his famous tunnel vision German-fested loops, his blank stare blinks when he was confused at what was being said, his worn yet gentle and inked hands, his crazy stories and crafted appropriate jokes I have memorized by heart, his uncanny knack for knowing every piece of musical trivia possible, his kindness and generosity and willingness to do anything for anyone, and even quite literally willing to give you the shirt off his back and then carry you down the street. I never want to forget his sweet chuckle, the twinkle in his eye, his gentle way with patience, his amazing surgical skills and abilities that never ceased to amaze me, his fun analogies, his quick wit and charm, and his kind heart. We work together like hand in glove, literally. And I feel like a piece of me professionally has left with him. Glen, may you ever know how much you are loved by so many. You will forever remain in our hearts, and I'm honored to now have you as one of my guardian angels.
Thank you, Emily. Is there anyone who would like to come up and share anything?
I hope I can make it through this. My name is Melissa. I worked with him from the very beginning, November 22nd, 1999. We opened. I remember we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what instruments we had. I knew nothing about dermatology. He taught me everything about Mohs. I remember that day he was talking about coming to your office to say there were tumbleweeds. We were excited to start surgery, and we had 2 patients. And I was like, okay. But it didn't take long for him to gain a lot of patients. And he truly, I worked with him for almost 11 years. The last staff meeting we had, I'd never seen him in such tears. He was such a good friend, mentor. He cried his eyes out. He couldn't even talk. I'll never forget that day. I learned to love this man more than anything, and his family has become such close friends. We do an annual cabin trip every year. He loves my children like his own. I will forever miss this man. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Anyone else like to come up?
My name is Christina Huntsman-Durham, and I'm here representing the Huntsman family. But luckily, I got my dad's genes from skin cancer, and so I think we were 2 of his first patients. So, Dr. Rose, I had several Mohs surgeries, and one time he was doing one on my forehead, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to leave you a Harry Potter scar. It will look great for Halloween." So he, as a patient, he made, you love to go see Dr. Bowen, and he made cutting up your face okay, because he laughed at the laugh, and a Band-Aid. So at the end of my dad's life, we happened to be in patient rooms right together. So Dr. Bowen took us both in our hospital gowns and cutting stuff off of both of us. And Dad and I would always call each other after, how many Band-Aids do you have? How many Band-Aids do you have? So he could always find something to cut off of us. So, but to his family, I feel like I know you because he always talked about his wife and his children. And Dr. Bowen was a friend to our family. We were all his patients. All 7 of my children were his patients. And it's been a week of reflection for our family with all of us telling wonderful stories about Dr. Bowen. And we felt like he was family. And I can guarantee you that my dad was there to meet him on the other side.
Thanks, Christina. So Karen Newman initially told me she didn't think she'd be able to come up and tell this story, and I was prepared to tell it for her, but here she is.
Share just a quick experience that Glen and I had when the Institute first opened, and I just wrote down my thoughts. Shortly after the Huntsman Cancer Institute opened, we decided to have our first skin cancer screening here. And as we mentioned, we recruited both Annalie and Glen from the University of Michigan. And so we ran our first screening just like they had done at Ann Arbor. Ann Huey was the director of public affairs at the time, and Glen was very excited about this first event. And so anything that Ann asked him to do, he was willing. We did multiple radio spots. We did a lot of publicity with the Pulse and the U Chronicle, and they did posters here at the Point, and then also Glen did a couple of TV spots. One of them was with Ed Yates at Channel 5. And so we had done a lot of publicity, hoping that we would have a few people show for this first skin cancer screening event. That first morning in May, we did a Saturday, and I had showed up at 7:30 to start setting up for this event. And even at 7:30, we had 4 or 5 people that were in the lobby. And I was really surprised because we didn't start until 9, but I didn't give a lot of thought, and I went ahead and set up. And we were starting at 9, and then Glen showed up at about 8:45. And at 8:45, we had 80 people waiting to be seen. And we were both shocked because at 8:45, it was Glen and me and a couple of volunteers that were going to put people back. And we had no idea how we were going to see this volume of people because we were hoping a few people would show up. So luckily we had other people showing up. So at 8:45, we put 3 people into rooms. So there were only 77 left that we had to see. So that at that time, we had other people coming in. A few minutes later, we had Annalie showed up, Scott Florell, John Zone, who he saw we had 77 waiting. And then next, Joe Jensen came and helped, Jerry Kruger, Dennis Russell, Diane Tristani and Scott Florell. They were both residents at the time. Sancy Leachman and John Burwell. It took us about 7.5 hours, the first event that we did. All of the physicians stayed most of the day because we were so busy. And that very first skin cancer screening, we saw 537 people, which was the most we'd ever done. Still 20 years later, we've never seen that many. And of course, that first year, Glen and I learned from our mistakes. The very next year, we decided that we would have all of the patients have appointments. So you had to have them to be seen. And then the next year, we also did half the publicity. We didn't do that publicity. That was a good year.
Thanks, Karen. One of the next speakers making our way down. Tiffany Wilbanks wrote something very beautiful here. Tiffany, would you like to read it, or do you want me to?
I'll come up. Okay, I hate public speaking, but I'll do it for Glen. And I have to put my sunglasses on because I forgot my other glasses in my bag.
So it was difficult to pick just one story about Glen to share. Do you talk about his humor that we all know and love? Do you talk about how absolutely humble he was, even though he was insanely smart and talented? Or do you talk about his sense of adventure and thirst for knowledge that couldn't be quenched? Well, I chose something else just as important. As all of you know, Glen was one of the sweetest souls to ever grace this earth. His heart and his joy was the purest of anyone I've ever known. And I feel like this story really speaks to that. Sorry, I'm like shaking. Sorry. Last year there was a volunteer that came around dressed as President Abe Lincoln. He was wearing a suit original from the 1800s, complete with handmade leather shoes with wood soles and a top hat. Glen was elated. He introduced himself. And proceeded to ask the man questions as if he was speaking to Abe Lincoln. His eyes were filled with glee, admiration, and wonder. It was like witnessing a child who truly believed in the magic of Christmas meet Santa Claus for the very first time. I have never before witnessed such pure innocence in an adult's eyes in my life, and I feel so lucky to have witnessed that moment. This is the Glen that I will always remember and hold dear to my heart. We are all better human beings for knowing Glen.
I don't look nearly as cool. My name is Jessica Donegan. I'm the newest Mohs surgeon here. And was lucky enough to do residency here with Glen as my mentor. And when I decided that I wanted to do a Mohs fellowship, he was nothing but supportive. And I was going to go do, or I was applying to do a location in Dayton, Ohio, with Heidi Donnelly, and I asked him to write me a letter of recommendation. And of course, it wasn't your normal letter of recommendation. It was very unique and personal. And I just want to read a couple of things that he wrote about me. Kind of going along with Keith, he mentioned I'm a very petite person in stature, but I can't be intimidated by his 6'3" male medical assistant, Ryan. The clinic Eeyore seems to be able to intimidate everyone. He's actually very good with patients, but in general doesn't tolerate dermatology residents who he almost uniformly views as arrogant. Jessica can handle Ryan like silly putty, and of course he lives it. She'll stand up to him and give as good as she gets. Anyway, I could keep reading, and I'm so flattered by the things that he said, but he ended it by saying, also, I read David McCullough's biography of the Wright brothers, so if she does the rotation, I'm going to send her on a pilgrimage to see a few of the sites mentioned in that book. I'd very much like to get there myself someday. I'm so glad that he let me have this letter, as a lot of times letters of recommendation are confidential. But I feel so fortunate that he shared that with me. And at the end of my rotation with Heidi, she actually pulled me aside and mentioned how wonderful that letter was and how she laughed out loud reading it. And I just think it encompasses him so much. And I'm so grateful that I spent my time with him as my mentor. And the first time that I covered his clinic for him, I sent him a text telling him that his shoes were very big to fill. And hopefully I can just keep striving towards kind of meeting his goal that he set for me.
Thanks, Jessica. We have time for one more speaker if someone wants to come down. Dave. So Dave Wada was the person that Glen found to take over his CTCL clinic and program.
Well, I trained at a major medical center filled with brilliant and hardworking people. But when brilliant and hardworking people don't get together to communicate, they seem to be like bone marrow transplantation for a benign but rare but benign condition. So when I came here to assume the cutaneous lymphoma lymphoma program, Glen had already put in place the multidisciplinary program where you get everybody in a room from different specialties, different disciplines, talking about patients, going over patients in detail, and making sure that mistakes like that never happen. And when he handed the program over to me, he made sure that we had the resources, that I had the resources that were necessary, even if it took away from his own feet. He made sure that the program was successful. And as you know, as many of you know, even after the program was long out of his hands, he continued to show up at conference and contributed to 7 o'clock every month, every first Monday of every month. He would donate his time, help run the conference, and contribute to the care of these patients because he was so dedicated to it. And so, as I look back at Glen's impact on my life, the thing that I can think of, the thing that stands out is his integrity and his commitment to make things right and to do the best that he could.
Okay. Karen, did you want to say something?
My name is Karen Huntsman. This has been a wonderful time for us to have a lot of reflection. A lot of reflection of our own life, Glen's life, how he's interacted with each of us, the difference he has made. I remember the last time I saw him, which wasn't long ago. I don't pick up skin cancer genes like my husband, and I went in to see him, and we were talking about John's life. And he just looked at me and he said, Karen, you're an 80-year-old woman. You just have barnacles on your body like an old ship. He gave me a hug and walked out the room. That's the last time I saw him. What an incredible human being. But as I thought of all the stories that you have told about him, I thought of Annalee. He wouldn't be the person that he is today without a loving wife and his family to stand behind him that made him who he really was, who gave him the opportunity to explore, to develop, and to do all the wonderful things. I thought of the first time that John was diagnosed with cancer. He came home and said, let's make a donation and let's try and do something to make a difference in the world of cancer. I was having a hard time balancing our books at the end of the month, and he was talking about donating millions to cancer. Nothing was too big for John to dream. I remember the first time we were talking about the conception of this up in our home up in Deer Valley, and we had Ray White with us, who was the first director of the Cancer Center. He had invited so many of the cancer patients, or the geneticists from around the world, as to what we should build and what we should create and what should be housed in the first building. John already knew that we were going to do more than one building. He was always pushing the envelope. And they said breast cancer was the hot topic now. We're going to do breast cancer. And they went through all these different kinds of cancers. And John interrupted them and said, well, we're going to have a place for skin cancer. And they all kind of rolled their eyes like skin cancer wasn't something we were going to get involved in the Huntsman Cancer Institute. It was going to be other kinds of cancers. And John said, no, my grandfather died of melanoma, and I want skin cancer here. Hence, you go and you find Glen Bowen, and he comes here with that camera, that X-rated camera that likes to take pictures now, and it gives books of these moles wherever they are. Anyway, what a wonderful experience it was for all of us to have Glen Bowen as a friend, a mentor, an associate, a father, and a husband. I'm kind of glad John went first. He meant the world to John. When John was down and out in lots of different areas, he always wanted to see Glen. Anyway, thank you for all that you do every day for people in your lives. Every day when we get out of bed, we can make a difference in somebody's life, lift them, help them through the various stages of our life. Great, thankful for all that you do, and we appreciate, everyone appreciates what you do here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. Our final speaker is going to be Glen's son, Scott.
All right, Doug, you did a really great job with that slideshow, but you made a mistake on one of the slides. In that melanoma conference picture, that arrow was not pointed at Glen. Actually, the guy right next to him, the bald guy with the hat, because he was a bald nose surgeon. He wasn't going to be anywhere without his hat. Shiny scalp. That's all I can muster out right now. So.
I think Christina has a video we're going to watch, and you can say a few words.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you to everyone here for coming. And for to all those who traveled quite a long distance. We have Selena and Justin and Joaquin, and I know people across the states are watching right now. So thank you all for coming and sharing your stories. And I really loved what Keith said, that we can't fill Glen's shoes, but that he was walking around barefoot, and we don't have to try to fill his shoes. His loss has left a tremendous hole in our department. One thing that we've talked about this week of how important it was for us to come together, to take some time and reflect, and Keith and Amanda and Doug and I spent some time on Monday just sitting and talking, and I urge all of you to try to do that today. You know, it's very hard to find the time when we're all so busy, but I think it's very important. We have an incredible family, an incredible dermatology and husband family, and it's amazing the amount of support and love that is here. We also have resources. We have an incredible resiliency center. Some of the folks that are from the center are here. Megan's in the back, Rob Davies, our spiritual care team are here to help. We're going to have this room the whole day, so if people want to stay around for a little while and linger and have some food and talk. We'd also like to invite you back to the department afterwards if you'd like to have more time with our resiliency center folk. Especially want to thank the family for coming today. It takes a lot of bravery to come. It's been wonderful to have you here, Annalie and Shelley and Scotty and Zoe and Quincy, your friends, Megan and Ann. Thank you so much. And
thank you.
I spoke to Annalie yesterday. Many people have asked about services as well as contributions, where they should go. First of all, there is a site set up that you can go to post your condolences and memories and photographs. This has been sent out in the communications, but feel free to reach out to us for that information. Yesterday, Annalie said that she's been thinking about this with the family, would really like contributions to go toward a memorial for Glen that the department can help support, some type of an endowment, a scholarship. So we're going to work on getting that done so that we can carry on his amazing spirit. Last, I want to just introduce the video. Again, thank you to the Huntsman Cancer Institute for providing refreshments today and space and all the support that they have. Please leave some condolence memories on the cards out there that are on the tables. Jonathan Martinez, thank you for putting this video together that we're about to show. So last year, a video was put together for Glen to tell his story, a little bit about his life. It had been uncut until yesterday. We kind of rough cut it together to hear a little bit more of his serious side. And then thank you all for sending in photos. We've assembled some of them to kind of show I think you'll see all the things that everybody talked about today, his hats, his spirit, kind of in those photos. The video, my favorite part of the video is actually what he says about patience. What he said is that patients, more than anything, want to be loved, more than they even want to be treated or cured. And I think, in the last few weeks and circumstances of his passing, I think that if there was anything that we could do as a large octopus, as a living organism, that we remember that is what patients want more than anything. And I think that's what we all felt as his colleagues and friends and patients, is that love. So thank you, and I'll go ahead and play this, and then that'll be the end of our program, but feel free to stay.
It actually happened at age 14. So I was a Boy Scout, and I was getting a merit badge. And the merit badge counselor is an adult who made sure that you passed all the requirements for the merit badge. So during that interview, he said, I have a mole on my back that's bleeding. I'd like your father to remove it. Would you please have him call me? So my father was a surgeon. Told my father about it, and he said, well, that could be a melanoma. And I said, what's that? And he said, oh, it's a skin cancer, and it's very dangerous. And I said, why? And he goes, I don't know. It doesn't stay in the skin. It tends to go to other parts of the body. So he called him. He got him in that week and removed it. It was a melanoma, and he died 6 months later from metastatic melanoma. So I ended up doing a report in my science class on melanoma, and I just became kind of morbidly fascinated with something so small. I really enjoyed watching my father interact with patients and try to, at the end of the day, love them. Make sure that they felt like they were loved and they were cared for. Even in the face of horrible situations like end-stage breast cancer. Medicine for me was one of the sciences that really had the human aspect of it that really appealed to me. It was a science applied to relieve human suffering. So that's what appealed to me about medicine. Kim Bateman was once the president of the Utah Medical Association. He was a family practitioner down in Sanpete County. He actually made the comment that a lot of patients would rather be loved than cured. So that's not to say that patients don't want to be cured, but it really is true that they need to know that the provider cares about them and has empathy for their suffering. It's just critically important, I think, in the healing process. And I'm extremely impressed with my colleagues here at the Huntsman Cancer Institute as I've met them over the years, how much they actually care for patients, how much detail, when they're referring a patient to me, how much detail they can tell me about the patient. They know their hobbies, they know their interests, they know their children. So I just found that very delightful in working with my colleagues at the Huntsman Cancer Institute. I just think they're fantastic physicians that are really committed to helping people with cancer. It takes a special personality because obviously a lot of cancer you can't cure. And that takes a special type of person to provide support for those very difficult cases. Well, if I can, I go on a mountain bike ride. Utah just has the best trails for mountain biking, and I feel extremely lucky that there's one right behind my house, and so I love to do that when it's good weather. In the winter, I love to ski with my son. That's a great sport. And then the other thing that my son and I like to do is ride motorcycles, dirt bikes. I like the movement and the speed, and it's very relaxing for me because you have to concentrate. If you don't concentrate, you're going to crash. So when it takes all my attention to ride a mountain bike or a motorcycle, it's relaxing because my brain doesn't think about any other problems. It has to focus on the thing I'm doing. So even though it's physically exhausting, it's mentally relaxing. I love surgery. And one of the reasons is it demands all of my attention. I mean, I have to be laser focused on the problem at hand if I'm going to successfully get the skin cancer removed and then repair the surgical defect. And so, in that sense, surgery is really relaxing for me mentally. It takes my mind specifically in a place where I have to focus, and then I can't think about other problems. So it's also physically exhausting. You know, at the end of the day, I'm pretty tired, but it's a good tired.
Again, thank you all. Wanted to say again thanks to Jonathan for the video and the photos, and Keith, who last night when I thought I was going to have to channel Glen when he first tried to show the gummy movie, it didn't work because it was so big it crashed the computer and I couldn't put the music together.
and I thought I couldn't figure out how to pirate the music of his 1,000-song playlist. And miraculously, Keith Duffy sent me an email at that moment with that music that he played. So thank you so much. Thank you all, everyone, for coming today.
It's like, trying to see you see the whole time. And it's like, I'm going to sit here.
Swan.
Oh, there's 2 9 o'clocks.
So they you guys okay to work today? Get out of here then. Go. What you do?
I'm only 6'1".
How many shoes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to go down and make sure it's okay. She's got the first patient. Like Brian worked. Okay.